Happy Monday, everybody. My name is Scott Morgan, we're off the Motor City Madmouth. Tonight is 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. Or really, is it? Our show tonight is going to be talking baseball and hockey. And the reason why I'm bringing on hockey tonight is because the Stanley Cup finals are right around the corner, like at the end of the week. We even know who the teams are Florida Panthers, the Edmonton Oilers. So, with that said, let me introduce the crew. We're going to talk about, first of all, we're going to talk about Jim Leland, a couple of interesting Tiger tidbits. The Texas Rangers, obviously, Ashton's all too familiar with that. And then there'll be hockey in the final segment tonight. So there you go. That sets the table. Now I'm going to let everybody know who is there. And I have a feeling it's going to be a wild ride in the chat room. I also want to make sure that everybody in the chat room understands that hockey will be in the fourth segment, and there's a lot of information. So while I appreciate what you're going to contribute there, when I get to the information part, with these guys, I want to make sure that you absorb as much as possible because I put a lot of research into that final segment to make this show what I know it's going to become. All right, with that said, to my right, Ashton Nix, welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me on. This is fun. The last few Mondays is just been looking forward to this.
Well, it gets better when the more you're on, the better it gets. I've been looking for that fourth wheel, and boy, you're driving it awfully good. Mark, the barber, Meriday, who's probably going to become the most versatile piece on the planet with this group. Welcome back, Mark.
Hey, thanks, Scott. Always excited for Mondays because I know we're talking 108 stitches baseball podcast, but you always give me that little spicy hockey tidbit.
Yeah, well, I want to talk about hockey in a moment after George Eichhorn.
Hi there. Good evening, all everybody. Good to be back.
All right, so let me talk about the hockey for a moment. What I'm going to do tonight is we don't have a designated show for hockey. However, after I get done working out a couple of things with my schedule on Thursday night, one of the things I'm going to consider doing is doing Fire Up and probably insert hockey on that show because Fire Up can mean anything. So, tonight will be a good test case to see what kind of response we get from our hockey audience in addition to everybody else joining the broadcast. So that's out there. Can't say it'll happen immediately. However, I do feel that it's important to listen to the people who support the show. And if they're looking for hockey, I will find a way to get us some more hockey content. And I don't mind leading the crew for that type of show. George and I have been around it forever, and you can obviously tell Mark loves it, and Ashton, well, you know what? You're just versatile with everything. It's good stuff. So there you go. All right. Well, with that said, let's get to it. Jim Leland's number 10 jersey will be retired on August 3rd of 2024. He guided the Tigers to a pair of AL titles, 3 American League Central titles, won a World Series with the Florida Marlins at the time, and he was successful in Pittsburgh. So, you know what? I'm going to lead on right to left on this situation, okay? Ashton, some thoughts about Jim Leland.
He's just a legend. I remember mostly with the Tigers. I know the Rangers went to back-to-back World Series. They played the Tigers in the ALCS in 2011, and just lots of respect for Jim Leland. He's just one of those guys. He's been to a few, spent most of his time in Pittsburgh. A little bit before my real knowledgeable sports time. I was still a kid back then, but remember him winning the World Series with the Marlins because I happened to play the minor league team I played, not minor league, the little league team I played on was the Marlins. So the year they won the World Series, so I was obviously cheering for them then, and then watching him with the Tigers, just absolute legend.
Joshua Dorr, okay, here's the deal. It's not your job to think that Mark would rather talk hockey today because the time that we met was at the Baseball Hall of Fame. So, Josh, I know your enthusiasm is for the sport on Frozen Pond, but you know what you have to do, Joshua Dorr? Roll, man. Okay, but, I don't mind going out there and asking Mark how many haircuts you did today, though.
We're under 10 today. Under 10 cuts.
There you go. You got it. Okay. With that said, now that we'll give you the lead on Jim Leland, Pittsburgh ties for sure. So.
Well, I'll tell you what, Jim Leland was the last manager that I remember leading the Pirates with some fire in his belly and demanding the most out of his players, to be honest with you. After he quietly exited Pittsburgh and went on to Detroit, it's just never really been the same. He knows how to rally a bunch of guys. He knows what buttons to push. He for the most part, he came up short though. Let's face it, he lost in the NLCS 3 years in a row, and I clearly remember when they were playing Atlanta and Sid Bream scored off of Barry Bonds, and at that point, I had to really just think, can he get it done? You see so many coaches that will get your team to the mecca of the sport and need to go one more step to win the chip, and he just couldn't get it done in Pittsburgh, and I'm not sure why. But I have the utmost respect for him. I loved his managing style. I loved the person he was on and off the field, because he was a huge community guy, and he's very deserving of all the accolades he gets.
George.
Well, yeah, I was caught a little bit off guard today. I didn't really expect this, and I'll tell you why. Mrs. Illich, as you know, is the matriarch. Her husband died, Mike, the owner of the team, and her son is running the ball club right now. But they're also running something called the Detroit Red Wings. And I have a simple question to ask the Illiches. If you're going to retire Jim Leland's number, why the heck haven't you done anything for Scotty Bowman? And I know he didn't wear a jersey number. That's not an excuse. The Pistons did it for their coach, Chuck Daly, and GM, Jack McCloskey. I'm just making a point here. I like Jim Leland. I like him. His World Series record in Detroit is 1-8. He lost twice. But I do appreciate what he did in this town. I do. He won 2 American League pennants and got them to the playoffs a couple more times. All I'm being fair is to Scotty Bowman, already a Hall of Famer. He was in the Hall of Fame right before he even finished coaching in the NHL. And you had him as your coach, and he won you 3 Stanley Cups. Something doesn't make sense. But again, that's a story maybe for another day. But seeing we're talking a little bit of hockey today, I had to put that in there. But Jim was very well liked by the players, the coaches, the broadcasters, the media. He kind of had them right in the palm of his hand, but it was a good way. I do agree with you, Mark. I'm glad you brought that up. Even though he was a Pittsburgh guy at heart, he never got you to the promised land. He never got you to the big one. Now, Scott knows, of course, Jimmy won in Florida. He won a championship. And then, of course, in Colorado, he fizzled out. So you got to look at his whole career here. But, guys, this is an honor from Detroit. It's not an honor. The Hall of Fame is an honor for all of baseball. But the retirement of the jersey is a Detroit thing that really does not take too much into a factor his other stops on the way. So, yeah, I'm supporting it, Scott. But again, I say let's do something for Mr. Bowman, too.
Well, one thing you have to understand about Scotty Bowman, okay, let's face reality, that you didn't even mention, okay, is he snapped that long 40-plus year drought. It's one thing to win a championship, okay? It's another to have a gorilla on your back called a 40-year drought. That, to me, is big. Now, Jim Leland, what you did mention, and I thought you would, George, was he started out with the Tigers in their farm system and ultimately became a major league manager and then finished in Detroit. Now, you made a reference about Colorado. Come on, George, if you're going to manage in Coors Field, he didn't fizzle out. Okay, the high altitude, to me, forced him to leave. Anybody would go ballistic in Denver. Okay, I know you don't travel much, Eichhorn, but, Jim Leland did not need a Rocky Mountain high. Unfortunately, had a Rocky Mountain low and, got out of there. He was a one and done. So those are some things. But, yeah, you're right, George. I enjoyed my time with Jim Leland. Always saw him in the press box anytime I went on. Always there. You talk about a legendary manager and a legendary person. You've got it all there. But, yeah, I'd like to see the Red Wings do something for Scotty Bowman. I'm glad you brought it up because it never dawned on me there. Yeah. That they haven't yet. So maybe, who knows, we could talk about it at a later date, but I think the comparison is relative. So with that said, we're going to bring Candy Ebling on the line here. And Candy, why don't you let everybody know how they can, call our little promotional station break. Go ahead, Candy.
If you like podcasts, you can listen to us. Monday nights is 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. Normally it's just baseball, but tonight we're talking hockey as well. Tuesday nights is Inside the Pigskin talking football. Wednesday nights is Sports Exchange. You never know what kind of sport we're talking about on there. It can be anything from cornhole to NFL to NBA to hockey, baseball, you name it, we've covered it. Thursday nights, stay tuned because that's a TBD night. We sometimes throw pundits, sometimes we'll throw fire up. You just never know. And then, of course, Wednesday nights on nofilter.net. Scott has a one-on-one interview show called the Motor City Mad Mouth Show. Interviewing, you just never know. This week, it's Jack Perconte. Last week, with Coach Bono. The week before, it was Melfar Jr. If you see that red subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner, that means you have not subscribed to us yet. Please subscribe to the South Florida Tribune's YouTube channel. Catch all of our shows. If you like to read, go to our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. Scott writes, George writes, I take pictures. Or if you really like to read, Scott wrote a book. It's called Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Apple, Google. And if you want to sponsor a show or advertise, call Scott 954-304-4941. If I missed anything, it's scrolling along the bottom. Let us know and keep reading and watching, and back to the regular programming.
Hey, Candy, before you go off, though, Rocket Scientist is waiting for the audiobook. Why don't you let Rocket Scientist and the rest of the audience know how far we're coming? We actually made some inroads on that this weekend, so I know it's in high demand.
So, yes, we are working on the audiobook. It is not as easy as 1, 2, 3. It's not as easy as Scott writing it. So, but we are working on it. We are hoping to get it up within the next month and a half, 2 months at the most. We will let you know when it is available. Thank you, Rocket Scientist.
Yeah, and the person that I'm looking at right now is Candy's brother, Steve, who's unbelievable. I'll never forget the time when he did the eulogy for my father-in-law, and Steve is obviously on course to do it. Kate Aitchison is also a candidate to either do this one, or she will be doing the second book that I'm going to write at the end of the year. But Rocket Scientist, thanks for bringing it up. And yes, Christian, we appreciate you coming on. We certainly know it's something we want to do. So we're working diligently to go out there and do that as well. So I love it when you bring it up. I'm glad that everybody's enthusiastic about it. And I got news for you. There's a market, so we're going to work our tail off. Candy, okay, when was the last time we covered cornhole?
We covered it, I would say, what was it, it's probably been about 4 months, maybe?
Yeah. I think we talked about it on the Professor and the Pupil when we talked about it. So cornhole, whether you know it or not, was one of these. What's that?
I think it was on Sports Exchange.
Oh, maybe it was. It was on one of our shows, but you never know. Just for you guys, since you like it so much, we might talk about it anyways on a fire up show just to have a little fun with it. But hey, I'm not afraid to cover any sport. I really don't frankly care. You know, obviously you go with the majors, but I'm one of those kinds of people that always likes to be different. And if there's an opportunity to be an off-the-wall thinker, Ashton, you know me, I'm going to go out there and throw it out there and let everybody come. Well, I'll do that once in a blue moon, but you know what? Whether it's cornhole, curling, I don't know anything about the sport either, except you take brooms and then shove that little round thingamajobber there and see what's what. So I don't know. I like to keep them all open, but really try to keep it to the majors. So good points out there. All right, let's keep the theme on the Tigers, Sidmus. I know everybody's looking forward to going out there and talking hockey. Well, we'll get to that. But folks, I want to tell you right now in the chat room, I've got a lot of hockey information. So please do your best to save those questions until I divulge that information. That you'll be able to respond in a manner that, wow, okay, this is pretty interesting stuff. Because our top priority is we want people to learn a lot about what we're doing here. And I believe that that's the thing that we not only want to educate, learn, and entertain, but I think those are the primary things to do. A couple of other Tiger tidbits are going to go to the Texas Rangers. Okay, on Friday night before their series at the Boston Red Sox, since the American League was founded in 1901, the Detroit Tigers have 14,409 home runs, while the Boston Red Sox have 14,407. It didn't hurt that they played in hitter-friendly parks like Tiger Stadium and Fenway Park. So, Ashley, when I sent you this, what was your first reaction about this? And then we're going to get into Spencer Torkelson in a minute.
That's a lot of home runs. Like
Yeah.
I know they've been playing baseball for a long time, but it's still surreal when you look at how many home runs that is. I mean, I'm a Rangers fan. We live here in Texas, and they've only been around since technically the 60s, but they've only been in Texas since the 70s. So
Right.
typically don't talk about numbers like that. How many wins you have? I want to say I just saw something the other day, like it's the Giants and Cubs. They have a certain, I don't remember if it's wins or hits or whatever, but it's like 100,000 or some ridiculous number like that. But yeah, that's hard to wrap your head around, even if they've been playing baseball for 120 years.
Yeah, it's safe to say none of us have relatives that are that old. All right, I'll transition over to Mark, who's been in the Baseball Hall of Fame. I'm sure you might have been in the Hockey Hall of Fame the way you travel, anyways.
Yes, I was. I've been there. It's amazing because when I think of some of the guys that have played on those teams, some of the masters they've had, longevity. I go the whole way back to guys like Jim Rice, who was one of my favorite players as a kid growing up. It doesn't shock me that they have had that many home runs hit on the other side of the coin. Now, obviously, I'm a lot older than Ashton from that perspective, but they've really had some masters throughout the course of the year. Recently with Big Poppy, even Pedroia, the second baseman he had Pop in his bat when he played with the Reds. I mean, you think about those two teams, those two ballparks, and honestly, like they turn out players who fit those ballparks, in my opinion, and that's what makes it interesting to go there.
George?
Yeah, the Tigers have had bombers for a long time. You're talking Charlie Gehringer, Mickey Cochran, Hank Greenberg. You're talking Al Kaline, Norm Cash, Rocky Colavito, Willie Horton, Cecil Fielder. I mean, Kurt Gibson. I mean, the list goes on and on and on for Detroit. So, no, it doesn't really surprise me because those are two of the premier franchises in baseball in Boston. And like Scott alluded to at Tiger Stadium, where most of them hit a lot of home runs. And as you guys know, Comerica Park has not been kind to the Tigers and to other hitters. It's mostly a doubles and sometimes triples. Yeah, there's home runs, but until they brought the fences in a couple of years ago at Comerica Park, there just isn't that kind of home run production. But yeah, when you look back, I'm glad you brought that up, Mark. Guys like Rice and Yastrzemski and Big Poppy. I mean, there's so many. JD Martinez spent a few years there. He had a lot of home runs. You got a lot of poppers there, as do the Tigers, in history. So that's a great thing, Scott. It's a good it's a good thing to talk about because those are two proud franchises, and as we know, two beautiful stadiums when they were in their heyday. Tiger Stadium and of course Fenway Park still is.
Yeah, well, we talk about this, but what we fail to understand is Juan Gonzalez of the Texas Rangers played there 1 year when they just moved in. He didn't want to play there anymore because he knew that his home run numbers were going to be heavily.
That's right. I'm glad you remembered that, Scott. Yes.
Well, sure. How am I going to remember Juan Gonzalez, George? I worked with the guy for the Gastonia Rangers.
That's
and he was on my team with Sammy Sosa. I got to remember this guy. So, all right, another Tiger note. Spencer Torkelson been demoted to AAA Toledo. He had a 204 average with only 4 home runs. Don Mattingly, to me, always taught me, that it's harder for guys in the minor leagues, particularly AAA, to acclimate to the big leagues. Now, albeit Torkelson had 31 last year, so, maybe he can get his timing back. Maybe he can get his confidence back. But here's a guy for whom you went out there and invested the number 1 pick out of Arizona State. And we were hoping that, if you're a Tiger fan, you're hoping that your middle of the order would have consisted of Kerry Carpenter, Spencer Torkelson, and Riley Green. And unfortunately, the Tigers' hitting woes at times have been awful. So, with that said, what are your thoughts, Ashton, about, Spencer Torkelson?
I mean, he's still young, 24. I mean, he's only been up for a couple of years now, but Huge disappointment so far. Like you said, first overall pick. Back in 2020, at the time, he had the highest signing bonus in MLB draft history,
Right.
something like $8.5 million. So he was, I mean, it's hard to live up to that. And
Right.
it's just been a disappointment. He's a career 218 hitter. He's still young, but I mean, lots of times you take him back and forth, and it's not like they just go from, hitting 218 to all of a sudden figuring it out. Maybe he gets some confidence back or figures some stuff out since he is still young. So there's still a chance. It's but definitely disappointing first few years of his career.
Well, not only that, the Tigers are hoping to be at the top of the American League Central standings. They had all these high hopes coming off of a pretty good year last year. We're still in June. They're not way out of it. Okay. But, okay, I think they're a little further behind than many of the people expected. All right. Third topic before we get to hockey. And Rocket Scientist, I'm going to get you my protection a little while, but I want you to caution you guys. I have a lot of information, so hang in there. And you can keep working on the keyboard, but it'll take a while to get your comments. If I were you, Rocket Scientist, Joshua, and the rest of you here, I'd grab a notepad and paper during this segment because you're going to need it when I get done with you guys. So all right, with that said, Mark, what's your thoughts about Torque?
Torkelson reminds me, or what's going on with him reminds me of what's going on with Henry Davis from the Pirates in a lot of ways. The high draft pick, number one overall, whatever, and a lot of money thrown their way, extremely high expectations, came out of college after having really successful college careers, got to the majors and just didn't produce. The Pirates ended up sending Henry Davis back down. He changed his batting stance. In 77 at bats, he has 7 home runs, and he's ripping the cover off the ball. So he got an opportunity to come back up. Sometimes when it doesn't even work, when you send a guy down, they just need a change of scenery. So if it doesn't happen that they can get Torkelson back on track down at AAA, they need to explore some other options and get something out of him because he's still a valuable player. You're right, Ashton. He's a young guy. So, you got to be, you got to play it smart is what I'm thinking.
Okay. George?
Well, yeah, it'd be an understatement to say people aren't concerned here in Detroit. Of course they are. He's just had a rotten year so far. I don't know, quite frankly, what happened. I mean, he had a fantastic second half last year. Reports were that he had a very good spring training down in Lakeland, Florida for the Tigers. And in fact, they were hitting the cover off the ball, the Tigers in Lakeland. They had a great spring training. Then when he got up here, okay, so give him a little slack, cold weather. We all know about that. But boy, oh boy, it's just, we don't know what's going on. We don't know. The thing that really bothers me, though, is, and I don't like to criticize announcers, and I'm not going to say who said this, but one of the Tiger announcers made the comment like, oh, no, they're not going to gain anything by sending him down to the minor leagues. No, it'll never happen. Well, you have to eat those words, Mr. Announcer, because it did happen. And I think that Hinch and Scott Harris just had enough. They could not go on and have 0 for 4, 0 for 5, 0 for 1 for 5. I mean, yeah, he just hasn't been consistent at all. Got hot for a couple games down in Arizona and Phoenix. Yeah, the Tigers won and played good ball down there, but overall, no, he's not there right now. But I agree with you guys. He's a number 1 pick. You're not going to give up on him right now. No way. And they just got to try to bear with this. And hopefully the coaching staff down in Toledo can help him out a bit.
Well, here's the thing before we move on to the final baseball segment, okay? Torkelson needs to get his confidence back because I believe that he's still lost it, okay? And secondly, I really do believe that he's lost it a little bit. And the thing is the Tigers have to win. Okay, now how long can you have a rebuild? 9 million years? Sure. I mean, I know the Pittsburgh rebuild is probably older than most of the people in the chat room. No, maybe not that bad for those that remember those championships. Just kidding. But really, at some point or another, they have to win games. AJ Hinch, okay, has done, I think he's done a really good job there, I really do. And I think they have the right manager, but, he still has to win. That's what they're looking for now. They're at this point where the rebuild should be just about done and that you're focusing on. It'll be interesting to see how they do it the trade deadline. We'll have plenty of time to get to that. But right now, it's about regaining confidence in them and the Tigers see if they can win. I don't know who they're bringing up. As I understand, Kerry Carpenter's on the injured list for a little bit. So, it's an opportunity for other players to step up. All right, final baseball topic of the night. The Texas Rangers are still actually in the American League West, 4 games behind the front-running Seattle Mariners, 4 games behind the front-runner Seattle Mariners. They're hosting actually the Tigers tonight. It'll be a 3-game series. They won 2 of 3 in Miami, including back-to-back 7-0 and 6-0 shutouts of the Fish. They're doing this, mind you, without Jacob deGrom and Max Scherzer, who are both on the 60-day injured list. So I can tell you the only thing I can say about the only thing I can say about what's happening there is Bruce Bochy will be in the Hall of Fame. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. This guy is an absolute genius. All right, Ashton. Okay, I realize the Marlins are now go into tomorrow's game against Tampa where they haven't scored a run in the month of June. They've been outscored 13-0. Just 2 games, folks. No reason to panic. 13-0. So Ashton, the Rangers, they're not looking that bad, are they?
Not right now. Overall, not looking great. They're creeping back up to 500. Luckily, the AL West isn't. No one wants to run away with it. They're holding off the Astros. Andrew Heaney, Michael Lorenzen, they pitched really well, and that's what we've been kind of looking for. Both of them have been disappointing this year, but both solid pitchers. And really, we weren't looking for Heaney and Lorenzen to be your main starting pitchers. They were kind of spot starters. That was the plan. And you said Scherzer, deGrom. Scherzer should be back here pretty soon. He's starting. He did have a setback, but that's kind of clear. He's about to start doing some rehab assignments. You forgot to mention Cody Bradford, who had been pretty good this year. He should be coming back pretty soon. So the Rangers are trying to get hot right now. Close to the same time when you're getting Josh Young back as well. Just a lot of injuries this team has had to put up with. Corey Seager had been slow most of the year. Now he's heating up. Last week he had hit 8 home runs in 8 games. He has a 15-game hit streak, and I believe it was on Saturday he had a 3-hit game. So hopefully they can continue this pace as they're getting some of these injured guys back, and hopefully not send any other guys to the injured list.
Okay, Mark.
Well, I'm agreeing 100% with you, Ashton. Get these guys back. We've hit June now, and the cream of the crop starts to rise to the top. You don't have to do it in one giant leap, but they got to keep themselves in contention. And then as we get into July and the trade deadline, fill those slots where you need to fill so that you can make that next step. And that's what they're going to have to do. I'm sure the expectations are sky high after last year for them. And that will help getting some of the everyday players back for them. I mean, getting Josh Young back, that's going to be tremendous for them. And I'm always I'm going to be honest with you, I'm always a little skeptical of a 40-year-old pitcher. So, I know it's Scherzer, but he's still 40 years old, right? And that always kind of makes me raise an eyebrow, just because the body eventually starts to slow down, and you don't know when it's going to be.
Well, Joshua, what a shame we lost a rocket scientist because we're about ready to go back to hockey. But it's okay. You can always listen to it later. I'm not definitely having a cardiac issue because rocket scientist isn't waiting for hockey. Oh, he's waiting for hockey. All right, now you see him, now you don't. So I pulled a David Copperfield on this guy. All right, there we go. Well, we won't wait much longer, rocket scientist George. The Texas Rangers. Yeah. And here's a little piece of information for you folks out there. In 1987, I worked as the director of public relations for the Gastonia Rangers. And on that team, we had Juan Gonzalez, Sammy Sosa, and there would be 12 players and managers and coaches that end up being in the major leagues on that team. Jeez. So, Ashton, I do have a little bit of connection to that organization. And for whatever it's worth, they used to train here in Pompano, Florida as well. So, which is in the eyes of Ernie Harpo, they're long gone. So,
yeah.
That's George. Let's talk about the Rangers, and then we'll give these guys what they're looking for.
Yeah. Well, you guys are right. Corey Seager is getting hot now. He's a great ball player. He always has been. I've always admired him. And then Scherzer. Yeah, I know Mark. He's 40, but I'll tell you, between him and Verlander, I mean, those two guys can still pitch very well.
Yeah.
Again, pre-injury to Scherzer. We know they fizzled out. Things didn't work out with the Mets, but nothing's working out in New York with the Mets. So it's good that those guys both got dealt. But I'll tell you what, no, Texas, hey, they're going to be hungry for another one. You know that. I mean, teams that won, they got a thirst for the next one. And yes, there are times when they fall flat, but Texas is well-built team. They're not going to fall flat on their face. They're going to be in there fighting for that American League pennant. Trust me, they are. And like you said, they've had a lot of guys injured, and we'll see how the Detroit Tigers do against them the next 3 days. But I'm confident that Texas is going to be in there for the long haul.
Yeah, I saw Marcus Semien get on base 5 times yesterday. Corey Seager, he doesn't need this guy.
Yeah.
Their offense is fine. They just have to hang in there from a pitching standpoint to get there. And we're only talking June 3rd, so we got plenty of time. All right, at long last, these guys are waiting for what they want. So it's the Florida Panthers and the Edmonton Oilers. And this is the Oilers' first Stanley Cup final since 2006. Rocket scientist, I'll get to that in a moment. Okay. Now, let's talk a little bit about last night. The Dallas Stars held Edmonton to 10 shots on goal in Game 6, which is the third lowest in NHL history. And, I have to tell you, last night as I was watching those two impressive periods, and I'm glad they averted the shutout and only lost 2-1, had the Stars have won last night, they would have won the series. And I think that they had Edmonton on their heels the whole time. I think Edmonton was just trying to hold on for dear life, and their defense held up enough. With that said, okay, let me summarize Florida's road to how we ended up getting here. Okay, here's what I think. Their first series against the Tampa Bay Lightning, I got one word that describes that series. Okay, and you guys can come on them after as I go through each particular point. Their series, the Tampa Bay Lightning, can be summarized by just a few words: 5-game scrimmage, because that's all that was. The Tampa Bay Lightning didn't even have a prayer to beat the determined Florida Panthers. Now, how do I describe the Boston Bruins series? Boston's penalty problems, Panthers pounced on power play, and I'll tell you, their power play was so potent in that series that every time I saw the Panthers go on a power play, I knew that the Bruins were in trouble. All right, Panthers beat the best goalie in the league. Here where they are. No, I know that, Joshua. Let me continue on. Now, for the New York Rangers, they ended up playing in 3 overtime games, but the reality is without Igor Shesterkin, or what's his name, Florida would have swept the President's Cup champs. Because I got news for you. Shesterkin played one of the best series that I have ever seen in my life. But I think the Rangers are out of gas. But another thing is a lot of the New York Rangers' best players did not perform to their capabilities. They didn't. To me, when you have a team that's won the President's Cup, scored a lot of goals, and then they were stymied by the Panthers, and that's where you're at right now. So now another little footnote here. The Panthers are 2-0 versus the Oilers this season. I don't even take any stock in that number other than the fact I have to put it out here because we know the Boston Bruins had the 4-0 advantage over the Florida Panthers, right? And we all saw where that ended up. The Boston Bruins are watching the Stanley Cup Finals on TV. The Florida Panthers are obviously playing in them. So a lot of things that I want to pour out there. So Ashley, give me your thoughts about the Florida Panthers' road to the Stanley Cup Final.
I mean, they've had a chip on their shoulder, not only all playoffs, all season, after making the finals last year, and even I think the year before they won the President's Cup also. So they've from I know the Stars didn't have the best record this season, but from being a Stars fan and being basically the number 1 seed in the West and favored, like you expect, hey, we should make it to the Stanley Cup Final. So the last couple of years, that's the thought that's been, I imagine that's been in Florida Panther fans' heads and even the Florida Panther players. And now they have another shot to get it done. And honestly, I agree with you when you're talking about Edmonton. I think Florida is going to get this done.
All right, let's go to Joshua Doerr's comments here at the bottom one. They didn't perform to their capabilities because they were shut down by the Panthers. They tend to do that. Well, here's the thing, Joshua. I just said that, but if you want to reword it differently, okay, that's fine. We all know that, in my opinion, I'm not going to sit here and not omit Sergei Bobrovsky, who's had his second straight year being an unbelievable goaltender, especially at crunch time. We know that Sergei has certainly done an unbelievable job. So, with that said, we'll turn over to Mark.
A couple major points here. If Bobrovsky wins and the Panthers win the Stanley Cup, I think Bobrovsky becomes a Hall of Fame goalie. He's done a lot of great things throughout the course of his career, and this might be the final nail that he needs to get it done. The Panthers are built to win in the playoffs. They roll 4 lines. They roll guys that cause a lot of confusion. They hit everything that moves. They don't depend on one particular player or a small group of players to score goals. And that's why the Panthers are going to demolish Edmonton.
Yeah, well, Paul, let's not forget, Paul Maurice is a heck of a coach. He's not only a coach, he's a psychologist. So he's got this group thinking. Yep. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting series. Florida definitely is on a roll. There's no question about it. I mean, they've been hungry all year, coming back from last year's performance in the finals. They didn't get it. And then again, how can I say this? That doggone President's Trophy jinx. The Boston Bruins down the tubes last year after being the President's Trophy winners. New York Rangers won it this year. There's just something to that really, really puts your team sort of a disadvantage, but maybe overconfidence or whatever happens there. It just happens too often that these President's Trophy winners, which is the most points as we know in the NHL regular season. But Florida has nothing to be ashamed of. They are on a roll. They've got, like you guys said, a good power play unit. They play good defensively. It really is a good team, and really is. I think it's going to be very difficult for Kenny Holland's Edmonton Oilers to defeat them.
Yeah, I think so too. So the reality is right now let's give the Dallas Stars credit, okay, for what they did. They played a heck of a series. They really did against the Edmonton Oilers. And for that matter, I just think the New York Rangers ran out of gas. I really do. You have 3 overtime games. That's not easy for anybody, especially under playoff circumstances. I'm not making that as an excuse why the Rangers lost. Because let's face it, it's not the regular season overtime where you got 5 minutes to the shootout. This is a dogfight as you end up getting to it. And you know what? I'll let my guys here to say, here's your dog check for the night. I have no problem with it tonight because the playoffs are a dog fight. I've always said that of all the 4 major sports, the NHL playoffs, the Stanley Cup playoffs are the best playoffs out of all of them out there. Nothing's even close. It just isn't. So, the Panthers have done what they had to do. Last year they backed into the playoffs or got in on the final day. And I thought last year they were on house money. This year there were expectations. There really were. And here they are right now with an opportunity to go out there and finish what they started. And I'm going to get to that as well. So with that said, I'm going to go to another segment here. And this is about pro sports where you're going back to the finals. All right, here's where we're going to go. Now is where we have a history lesson, okay? So guys in the chat room, what I want you to do is do the best you can to be patient with this, and you might find that you might learn a whole lot. So let's go back to the Dallas Cowboys when they defeated the Miami Dolphins in 1971. 24-3. How did it work out for the Miami Dolphins? They won a pair, including the undefeated season. So there you go. Secondly, the Cincinnati Reds in 75 defeated the New York Yankees in 1976. The Bronx Bombers won a year later. Hey, you know what, rocket scientist? I can handle a lot of things, But I'm going to tell you right now in front of our national audience, I don't appreciate you referring to me as a communist leader. I think that's about as classless as the comment, and I should kick you out of the chat room for that because I take that very seriously. So if you don't want to get kicked out of the chat room, those are 3 words you might not put in the chat ever again, or you won't ever see another show. Rocket scientist. If you're a rocket scientist to me, you got to be smart, not stupid. And that was, how would you guys like to be called a communist leader? Forget about the ball bust. Okay, this is a professional show, rocket scientist. So save your ball bust, okay, to what it is. Let me ask you a question before I go on further. Okay, how would you like to be called a communist leader? Any of you guys?
No, absolutely not.
What about
That's
you,
a terrible,
Ashton?
terrible thing for him to say.
Yeah,
No,
hey, rocket
no.
scientist, do me a favor. Save me the calls in the morning if you're going to go out there and bring on communist leader. Communist to me in this country isn't what it's about. Okay, try to use something called intelligence in your education to avoid that. Yeah, you're getting roasted. You're not getting roasted. You're getting hammered, and you're getting hammered when the show's getting better. Okay, so tone it down, rocket scientist, or you'll be out of this chat as quickly as Candy can get rid of you. Okay. So let me go back to a couple of things so that I got off point. Again, Dallas defeats the Miami Dolphins 24-3. The Dolphins have an undefeated season with 2 back-to-back champs. Cincinnati Reds, the Big Red Machine under Sparky Anderson, beat the New York Yankees. They win it the following year. The third example that I want to talk about is a really, really good one, okay, that most people probably don't even realize. But in 1978 and 79, the Washington Bullets, okay, and the Seattle Supersonics won a title in each year. And, you know, your coaching matchups were Dick Motta versus Lenny Wilkins. And I remember the first year that the Sonics were in there, Marvin Webster was the center. And I'm going to tell you right now, okay, when he left, Jack Sikma was unbelievable, and the Sonics would win that series in 5. So, you know, I'm going back here. I really like this because when you talked about where I'm leading with it, okay, to the Florida Panthers or any team for that matter, that's why this information is very pertinent to what we're talking about. In the bad boys era, we know the Pistons and the Lakers each won a series championship, but the Pistons got revenge. Of course, Pistons swept the Lakers the following year, and of course they had that unbelievable 7-game series there. But, you know, the Pistons came back. They were hungry. And as a result, they won a championship under Chuck Daly. Now, let's go back to a city that we're all familiar with, the Detroit Red Wings versus the Pittsburgh Penguins, 2008, 2009. Red Wings won in 2008, and the Penguins got revenge the following year. Now, I will tell you, though, when I talked to Jimmy Devellano once in Tampa, he said Mike Babcock lost that series. Pittsburgh didn't win it with some of his questionable moves.
Yeah,
And,
blah.
what's that?
I said blah blah blah. Penguins won that series.
Yeah, well, they did. It doesn't matter. I mean, the reality of the situation, it's the 2 teams met back-to-back years. One won it, and then the other one followed up with it. Again, mind you the facts. From 2015 to 2018, okay, the Golden State Warriors ended up playing the Cleveland Cavaliers. Okay, that was a pretty interesting. I think they played 4 times, but I'm only talking about back-to-back in this case, okay? Golden State defeated Cleveland in 15, and Cleveland got the best of Golden State in 2016. We'll continue on because I got a couple more, okay? In 2013, the Miami Heat, okay, defeated the San Antonio Spurs is what they ended up doing. And the Spurs got revenge in 2014. So you see a little bit of a pattern. I've got one more, and then I'm going to open it up, okay? So and then in 1984, okay, you had the Boston Celtics and Larry Bird defeat the Lakers in 85. The Lakers down the Celtics with Magic Johnson the following season. So you have 84, 85 Magic and Larry Bird. So the reality of the situation is when I talk about this sort of thing, losing equals learning is what it does. It's the worst offseason that you will ever have, knowing that you were the finished second. It really is. So though, yeah, good night, rocket scientist. I guess you're not used to being roasted and all that business when you make a stupid, idiotic comment. I really don't care. But if you want to stick around for my prediction, I'll be more than happy to offer it. So let's talk about last year, okay? That the Panthers lost to Vegas a year ago. But here's my prediction for this series. The Florida Panthers will win this series in 7. If Edmonton wins, Ken Holland retires. But I want people to understand that the two headliners here are going to be Matt Tkachuk versus Connor McDavid. I know you have a lot of other great players, but Matthew Tkachuk is expected to be a Panther for a while. We all know about Connor McDavid, who to me is an absolute franchise type of guy. So, but I'm going to tell you right now, you got a lot of great players, but if the Florida Panthers do win, they're going to fall into the same problem that every Stanley Cup team ends up winning. Try to pay these guys the following year when you have a salary cap. Because if you didn't have a salary cap, Mike Ilitch would have bought all the players he wants, and who knows how many players he would have bought the following year. I said enough. My prediction is exactly what it is, okay? And yes, Joshua Dor McDavid is a generational player, okay? I do believe the Florida Panthers will win 4-3. I really do believe it. I think you're going to be looking for one of the best series out there. No shortage of star power. However, Panthers in 7. That's where I'm at. Ashton, go ahead.
Real quick before that, I have one more back-to-back
Sure, go ahead.
example. It was the same Miami Heat 2 years before. The first year of the Big Three, they were all confident, lost to the Dallas Mavericks in 2011. Next year, beat Oklahoma City. I think it was 4-1. I think they took it extra hard that year because they had been so confident and cocky in the previous offseason putting their team together. But yeah, I have Florida winning this one as well because Edmonton, I think early in the series, Dallas kind of outplayed Edmonton, and it wasn't that Edmonton overcame the Stars, and maybe it's because I'm a homer and this is just my perception, but I feel like the Stars really didn't play to their potentials in Game 5 and Game 6, especially not the first period and the first part of the second period in Game 6, where I think the Stars were a better team. They just weren't playing really well. Edmonton did do a good job, but I think this is the Panthers' year to win.
Well, I mean, Josh Dor says 5 or 6. Well, I don't know. I think it's going to be a 7-game series, but Josh, that'll put your opinion in 5 to 6. And you could very well be right. I don't know. But I say 7. I think you're looking for a great series. Go ahead, Mark.
Well, you know what, Ashton? I think Dallas got out of their game. They didn't get their scoring from the people that they were counting on to get scoring with. And that's pretty much the reason they didn't beat Edmonton. They were the better team than Edmonton, to be quite honest with you. I think Connor McDavid is a superstar player, but I think he carries way, way, way too much of that team. And for that reason and that reason alone, the way the Panthers play, built like a playoff team, they can roll 4 lines. Like I said earlier, they're going to take him out of the ice. Yes, he's going to get his. I get it. He had 30 points in the playoffs again. I get it. But it's a different animal when you get to the Stanley Cup Finals. All that tired, those tired bodies really don't mean much at that point. Those guys know we've got 7 games at the most. And I just think that I like the 5 or 6 that Josh said. I really do. And I don't, Scott, as much as I love Tkachuk, he's just a gritty son of a gun. I think Alexander Barkov will be the difference in that series.
Well, and I'll tell you what, how do I argue against Sergei Bobrovsky for crying out loud? This guy, the only thing he hasn't done yet is won a Stanley Cup, but the way he's been playing, Sergei Bobrovsky is going to be, we know he's been a factor the last 2 years. I mean, once upon a time, Spencer Knight was a great prospect for the Panthers. All of a sudden, he just fell off the radar. Yeah. And there was a time when I thought Spencer Knight would overtake Sergei Bobrovsky, dial in, and then you go out there and enter in Bobrovsky playing clutch hockey. I mean, even the Red Wings got Alex Lyons, George, who actually got him in the playoffs and moved on. So Sergei Bobrovsky's a guy to really watch a lot in this series as well. Good point. So Alexander Barkov, we know what kind of a player is. What is he? I believe he's the captain of the team anyways, right? So I think they actually, as I understand it, as they call it Barkov County. So, it's okay. They can do that. But, we'll see. But, George, go ahead.
Yeah. And then, as far as that was great homework you did, Scott. And I really admire your due diligence on that. The one that sticks out in my mind, of course, is a real old one again. In 1967, the Detroit Tigers battled. It was a close race between the Minnesota Twins, the Tigers, and the Red Sox. Red Sox ended up winning and going to the World Series and being defeated by a very, very good St. Louis Cardinals team. Well, the next year came along, and the Tigers from spring training on were fired up as hell. And they rolled through the 1968 season, as you guys might remember, and they played the Cardinals in the World Series. And oh man, there's no way Detroit's going to win that, man. The Cardinals got everybody: Bob Gibson, Kurt Flood, everybody. Oh, okay, Tim McCarver, yeah, okay, thanks, guys. Well, we know what happened. Our friend Mickey Lolich, who Scott has interviewed and bought his book, Mickey Lolich is dominated and 3 wins in that series. So I'll leave it right there. But that's the one, the back-to-back thing. The Tigers were hungry in 68. As far as this series goes, I agree. I think it's going to be 6 or 7. I'll just say 6 for the sake of an argument in Florida's favor. I mean, they've been close. They've been building this team, this franchise, and I understand there's been hiccups along the way and all that, but they're primed. They're ready to win. I'm happy for Edmonton, too. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Montreal was the last Canadian team to make it there. And then, Toronto, what a joke they've been. I mean, the Canadian fans, let's face it, I mean, they're some of the best fans in the world in hockey. So now they got a team there that they can root for. But I just don't think they have enough. Even though I like Connor McDavid like most people do, I just don't think they have enough to carry them through. And Florida is just, on a roll, like you guys said. Rolling 4 lines is so important. I'm glad you brought that up because that's what the Red Wings did when they were good. They rolled 4 lines. They had that grind line, as you recall. And, I mean, you need that. You need scoring. You need defense, and you need checking and all that good stuff on defense. So I'm going to go with Florida in 6, like Scott.
Well, Joshua, they were embarrassed until 5-6 years. Enter Bill Zito, okay? This guy here is a mastermind. He, to me, is the equivalent of a Ken Holland. And yet now you have Holland and Zito, the general managers, presidents, whatever you want to call them, that are all the decision makers. So, yeah, you get one good general manager, you keep the guy around 10, 20 years, and you might have more retired jerseys and banners. So it all comes down to the front office. Joe Quenneville was a guy who I actually thought could take this team a distance, but unfortunately, scandal ran him out of the league. And, Andrew Brunette, okay, I thought did a good job. He really did. But I think the only reason he was not hired is the Panthers opted to go with the experienced coach and Paul Maurice. This guy is just unbelievable. He, you talk about a lot of the great coaches in hockey, let's say 5, 10, 15 years from now, Paul Maurice's name will wind up in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Think about it. He's taken this team to 2 straight Stanley Cup finals. Paul Maurice. He really has. So, I guess the thing I tell people is the reason why I had this segment was because I don't need to justify my the Panthers winning in 7 games. I don't need to do that. All I'm trying to do is show precedent how a team comes back from being hungry when they lose and how bad that offseason stinks when you're thinking about, God, we were 1 series away. What went wrong? Again, my objective here on the air is simply one thing and one thing only. And this is what I've learned. Be objective. I am not a homer. I go out there, research everything I have, let the facts bear themselves out. And once I feel the facts bear themselves out, I'll formulate what I consider an educated opinion. And, I'm not here to get betting advice for those that want me to start a betting show. I don't want to do that. I'm not looking to get assassinated out there because I gave you this and that. But if I give you enough information, it's up to you'll be further ahead with what we're doing, okay, to make sure that you can formulate your own opinion. And Joshua, that's a good point. The fans hated the Maurice hire. Well, you know what? I think what fans say, I don't care. He's obviously really proven himself anyhow. So no disrespect to fans, but to me, if the fans are so good, they'd be sitting in those chairs, okay, instead of out there screaming 1 minute they're like this, and I kind of buy that stuff. And I really enjoy my spot in the press box. I don't have to hear it anyways, or I'll watch it on TV. Loaded show, predictions. Folks, I may live in South Florida. I love it here. The weather's nice, but I'm going to comment on teams objectively based on what I see in front of me and let things go from there. And I think that's the biggest thing. There might be some people that agree. This I don't even care, but that's how I came to this conclusion that I do believe that Florida will win it in 7 based on the track record of teams that have lost. And again, we're talking about them being there back to back here. Any closing thoughts on the hockey stuff? Ashton, I'm going to turn it over to you.
I think it's going to be a great series.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be really good. It's great for this show for sure. Obviously, as we've seen that the Panthers are in it, because you've talked a third of the show about hockey, and I think the chat room was more alive for that than it had been the rest of the show.
Well, the chat room, when I thought about bringing this on, I knew the passion and energy for these people in here, was going to be great. Again, the only time I got a little disgusted was when Rocket Scientist made an idiot out of himself by talking about a communist leader. I hope that he can look at this show, review it, and realize, there's a fine line of what I'll allow in the chat room. If I think it's ethical and responsible, I'll do it. But Rocket Scientist, to me, it's not about roasting you tonight. It's about making sure that you lose this as a teaching moment. I'm very easy going in the chat room. I appreciate all the input. You guys have podcasts, right, Ashton and Mark? I can't imagine you would allow anything like that to occur on your show at all.
No. Usually people aren't that brave or bold.
Yeah, it's tasteless is what Rocket Scientist did tonight. Mark, what do you think?
In terms of Rocket Scientist?
Yeah, in terms of the communist leader business.
Yeah, I think you got to hold yourself in check. Now it's not the time to be calling somebody that are offensive. This is supposed to be an energetic, fun show, just, talking about sports, not be degrading anybody in any way.
Yeah, I think Rocket Scientist, welcome to the doghouse, Rocket Scientist. Getting out of my doghouse isn't easy, but when you come up with that stupid garbage, it is what it is. But, again, I want to make everybody know, to me, I am easygoing. I love the chat room. I feed off of it. I love ideas from people, and I want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to comment in a very sensible, legitimate way. And, I'm sorry if I went off a little bit, but like anybody else, it's a teaching moment. And I don't think anybody wants to be referred to in that sort of context, because in life, sometimes you could take things a little too far, and to me, that's the kind of thing that we want to make sure it's an entertaining show, but we want to make sure that the crux of what we're talking about is designed to educate and inform. And again, I enjoy talking hockey on the baseball show tonight, because bear in mind, it's only the exception, not the norm. But how can you avoid it when you had the Stanley Cup playoffs a matter of hours away? You can't. But again, like anything else, whatever topics I had that I was going to use this week will be over next week, and I'll have more information on them anyhow. But this is a no-brainer to include this hockey segment in there. There's just a lot more information to go along with it. So I've said my point on that issue, and hopefully people that are out there listening will understand that we love everything that we're getting there. It really, really do. But, we just want to make sure that everything is a clean type of show, and that's what we do. Josh, I know you love the hockey part of the show. Tell me something I haven't heard before. It beat the baseball talk. You don't like baseball, but, I got to tell you this, though, George. I will say it right now. You mentioned something about baseball is my blood on my Facebook page, right?
Yeah.
What George Eichhorn didn't realize that he was doing, as I am planning to write a baseball book, that will be the title of the book.
All right.
Yeah, I couldn't believe when
Awesome.
you hit that one. Boy, that was the correct. If you guys saw that particular reference there, I was at the Marlins. I thought Eichhorn just came up with the title of my book. I told my other half.
Okay.
All right. Well, I hope everybody's enjoyed this edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk, but we're not done yet, because Mr. Nix is going to let everybody know how they get a hold of them.
Well, you can see my tag right there at Ashton_Nix, or just search my name, any social media platform where it pops up. Also search Peak One Sports and see all the shows, articles, everything that, all the content that I make.
The only problem with you, Ashton, is I have to carbon copy you and make copies of you, because I got news for you, buddy. To me, and this is a respect to you, there aren't enough Ashton Nix out there that can just walk into a new show and hit a grand slam home run, pun intended in this case, because it is a baseball show. So, yeah, we just need to find a way to go ahead and go out and make more of you. But I'm glad to have you on my network. And of course, now there you got a fan out there. Candy, throw this one up. I follow Peak One Sports on Facebook. Great content. So there you go. That's how we collaborate. Ashton, as you've figured out
Appreciate
by
it.
now,
Thank you.
and that's how we get the word out there. With that said, Mark, let everybody know how they get a hold of you.
Original Sports Podcast is everywhere on social media. You can either find us at OSP with M&M or Original Sports Podcast. We do our show every Tuesday night. Tomorrow night, we have Smitty on from Around the 412. We're talking all Pittsburgh Steelers stuff tomorrow night. Anything from draft, free agency, to who looked good at mini camp, to what's going on with OTA. So we're pretty excited for that show. We also have our show on Roku every Tuesday night from 9 to 10.
Very good. And of course, as Mark and I talked about before the broadcast, I don't know if I mentioned it here. Okay, we will incorporate Fire Up in some of our hockey into our Fire Up show. So, Mark, I have a couple of people. Anytime you want to come on, Ashton, you have an open invite to any show you want. You're welcome to participate. All right, George Eichhorn, you're the only one who won't be on there because I got to make sure I don't wear you out too bad. So go ahead, George.
Yeah, don't forget I'm the old senior citizen of the gang. That's all right. Yeah,
me, that's for sure.
I wanted to mention one other thing about this Florida Panthers. I forgot to mention is Paul Maurice and Ed Jovanovski, Windsor Spitfires. Remember that. That's a neighbor of Detroit, the Windsor Spitfire connection. I agree with you, Scott. Maurice has been a great coach and still is. And Ed's role with the Panthers organization has been phenomenal. And two guys that are right across the river from here in Detroit are in the finals. You can reach me at gicorn@yahoo.com. You can follow me on Scott's and Candy's publication and obviously internet site, South Florida Tribune. And I write under the Motor City Tribune. And at the end of my column is a link to this book you see up in the corner here. Scott is in that book. I was happy to write his foreword and was very pleased to put this book out years ago about Detroit sports broadcasters on the air. And follow me here on 108 Stitches and the Sports Exchange and other great programs. Great show tonight, guys. And thanks for setting all this up. It was really fun being on tonight.
All right, well, you know what? Katie Edlin coming back on. And Katie Edlin's going to take care of business she took care of before, and she can wrap up the broadcast. Go ahead, Can.
If you see that red subscribe button down in the corner by Ashton, please click it. Like us, share us with all your friends and family if they'd enjoy. We talk baseball normally on Monday nights, but we added a little Stanley Cup hockey for you, for all those hockey fans out there. Tuesday night is football. Wednesday night is Sports Exchange, where you never know what we're going to be talking about. And we also ask you to jump over to the nofilter.net site on Wednesday nights because Scott does a one-on-one Motor City Mad Mile show interviewing this week Jack Perconte. If you like to listen to podcasts wherever you get your podcast, we're there. Listen. Go to our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. You'll see the writings of George, Scott, all kinds of other people, transcripts from the Dolphins, Jaguars, Lions, a lot of college sports, the Hurricanes, FAU Owls, USF Bulls, even some Michigan Wolverines, those national champion Wolverines there.
Yeah.
We also want to tell you all about Scott wrote a book about his 40 plus years in the media industry and how it has changed. Very interesting read. Go out there, get it. Lessons from the microphone, tuning into the enduring wisdom of visionary leaders. Available Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Google, and Apple. We are still working on the audio version of the book. I appreciate those that want it, and as soon as we do have it out there, we will let you know. At Tribune South on Twitter or X, whatever you call it. You can always email us any show ideas, any questions, southfloridatribune@gmail.com. We also are looking for anyone to sponsor or anyone, want to advertise on any of our great programs. Call Scott, 954-304-4941. If you missed any of this, because I talk not quite as fast as Scott, Motor City Madmouth, but I try, you can see it scrolling along the bottom. Thanks for that station identification, Scott. Back to you, Motor City Madmouth.
She'll talk fast. I guess I'm responsible for that one because she hangs around. Hey, Katie, though, while you're at it, why don't you go out there and put Robert Wardell's comment about damn rocket? I think this is pretty good. You know, when I go out there and pour it on, another one above it. Well, I got those two. All right, but that one. All right, damn rocket. You got the dunce cap and Josh's disappointment. You might need to be exiled to the salt mines. I could think of other places, but that's a good place to start. and Robert, just so you know, okay, I'll tell you right now, and if you just tuning in now, I did make a Seattle Supersonics reference, okay, and a really good one dating back to 1978, 79. I love those Sonics when they were coached by Lenny Wilkins. So, you'll be able to see it probably a little bit later in the show, but I remember the Seattle Supersonics and saw them play when I was out in the Pacific Northwest as well. So I know Robert's out in the Seattle area, so that was a great franchise. I really loved watching them. That was just pretty cool stuff. So all right. With that said, great job by my crew. I'm really proud of them. And again, folks, thanks for understanding my passion and fire when it comes to putting things on here, because I want to make sure that everything that we have on here is clean cut, done with integrity. And I think that's important for people that are watching this show. And my book, Lessons from the Microphone, talks about the certain types of things to say on the air and certain things not to say on the air. So with that said, okay, I want to thank everybody for joining us on this edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. And of course, tonight we added hockey for good reason. The Stanley Cup Finals. We all put our predictions out there. You're welcome to go out there and grade us and give us a report card as that incredible series that's about to start, okay, unfolds. So meanwhile, on behalf of George Eichhorn, Mark the Barber Meriday, and Ashton Nix, my name is Scott Morgan Roth, the Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us on this edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. And for the most part, we appreciate everybody what they did in the chat room. Good night, everybody. We'll see you next week.